How are you doing, Mr. Avison?
Alright, Ace, thank you. How are you?
I'm alright, thank you. What's all this shit on there? What have we got going off there?
I knew you'd start.
I know, what's going on? What?
Well, it looks like a load of ramble, doesn't it?
It does look like a load of ramble. What you got cracking off there?
It's the old stage floor from Rock City.
Oh yeah.
Look at that.
Nice.
Some history there.
There is some history there, and some fag stains and some alcohol stains and...
And I made, well, I've made 4 guitars with it now. There's 2 being finished off. There's one here, look.
Nice. That's great.
And then I've got another one at the back. Are only the privileged few can come.
We've got backstage access here.
This one's nearly ready to go.
Oh yeah. Nice. Have a good bag. Great.
So the other day I had an inquiry from a customer in Australia who used to live in Nottingham, and he went to Rock City a lot.
Oh nice.
Loves the idea and he wanted a guitar. And all I've got left were these offcuts, so I'm putting together a patchwork quilt. It's on a backing sheet which you can't see at the minute, and then it will be fitted onto the Mule.
Nice.
It works a little bit better because it's a lot more linear, and the flooring will run from the binding line around there like that.
Great.
And then the whole of the top will be bound.
A lot to go into it.
Yeah, there's a lot of work. There's a lot more work in doing all these bits and pieces, but it's quite interesting. And then you've got, look, there's nails showing there, which I shall leave in and lacquer over. Some of it did have Canadian maple on the back, but it's all stamped in the back, but it's all been planed off. That's a good piece with the old finish.
Nice. That's what I remember.
And all this gunk is all the beer and crap that went on the floor every night.
Nice.
So that's my work cut out for the next few weeks.
Yeah, when's your deadline?
December is coming over in the autumn. And in an ideal world, you want to take it back in December, which is touch and go. Yeah. To get it finished in time, but I'll give it a shot.
Nice, and we'll check back in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, and see the progress.
Brilliant.
Or not.
Brilliant. I'm sure we'll see plenty.
Maybe.
Thank you, Mr. Avison.
Okay. So for the Mule body, we've got a nice piece of Obesh, which you need to pick your side, what's going to be the top, what's going to be the back. I prefer that side. It's cut out roughly with a bandsaw from your template, which is the one I prepared earlier, MDF, but I do prefer acrylic. It's not going to sit quite flat. Crap on the back. These have been shellacked to stop the moisture getting into them. It's just picked up a bit of junk while it was still tacky. This is just going to be a rough cut on the bandsaw. I tend to cut it, I don't know, 3 or 4 millimeters oversize. And just as an idiot's guide, top, as I have done one the wrong way around before. This bandsaw is not the best bit of kit in the world, but it does do the job. We now need to position the template and get it all properly marked up. Double-sided tape's great for this. don't put too much on because it's really difficult to get off sometimes. And as long as it's sitting neatly all round, doesn't quite matter how, we can press it down. I also like to use some locating pins. These are 4mm drill bits. Which helps for realigning your template further down the line and stops it sliding about should the tape become loose. These two are located in the pickup positions, and this one's below the bridge. Once it's been trimmed around the perimeter, I can then mark the centre line and this cross line. And I'll trim this either by hand with a router or on the router table, which I don't like using because it's a bit of a beast. We shall see. We can cut the body using a router and a template. I use this Makita cordless router an awful lot. Their gear's really good, and no, we get no commission off them. Alternatively, you've got the router table and template, but it is a bit of a monster and it really does snatch on end grain. Always making sure you've got a clean and tidy workshop, nothing on the floor to trip over, no trailing cables, dust extraction, and that you use all the proper safety equipment. The locating dowels are drilled in, so I can leave them permanently in place if I want, and then centre lines will be transferred to the body. Next up is the neck pocket. New template. So it's marked out reasonably accurately, and then the majority of material is then drilled out. Always use the router as little as possible. Remove excess material with a drill. It's a lot easier and safer. So here we have as much material as possible has been removed from the neck pocket with a Forstner bit. That's with a Forstner bit. That's 14mm diameter, but you can use whatever you want really. We now accurately refit the template to route out the neck pocket. So this is where your dowel pins come in really useful. And quite often you'll have to remove that pin to give access to your router, so you're still well located, and it's got a couple of bits of double-sided tape top and bottom. So that will now be, the neck pocket will now be routed. Of course you could do all this on a CNC machine in about 5 minutes, but where's the fun in that? So there we have what should be a good tight neck pocket. This is a neck off another guitar. Maybe even a bit too tight for some. Don't want to dent the body. I might route in a Allen key socket so you can get to the truss rod on this. I've not decided yet. Because it can quite often clash with the neck pickup, which in this case has a surround, I think. I can't remember now quite how we're doing it. I'll have to work that one out. That for me is one of the big benefits of not using a CNC machine. I don't have to plan ahead. At this stage I've decided that this guitar is going to have 2 pickups because I've drilled 2 dowel holes, but I could just as simply have not bothered with that one and kept it at one pickup, and then down the line if I decided I can stick another pickup in. With a CNC machine things are more set in stone once you press that button. So I think the next step with this one, I'm going to grain fill it because I shall be spraying in the morning, and I can get a coat of sanding sealer on it, and I'll cut the pockets out later. So next up we need to cut out the control cavity and reduce the level of the body in the area where the control plate fits. That's the prototype that we made. So we'll be using templates to do that. That's the template to cut out the recessed route into which the control plate will sit. That's a resin one, it's like Blue Peter, one we made earlier. And that's the template to cut out the control cavity. You've got to be careful there that you've got to get the sufficient depth to allow for the recessed control plate, because obviously that sits a bit lower, that's sitting down there like that, and you've got to allow for the depth of your pots and your toggle switch. You don't want to be too tight on the back of the guitar cavity, and obviously if you cut it too deep you'll come straight out the back of the guitar, which has happened. So this material will be drilled out, and then the finer bits and the fine lines will be routed. So we'll do that next, but there's no point in putting it on a video because it's quite boring. I've also routed out for the string ferrule block using this template. This is for the Apostle, but it'll do both. That one gives you your full depth, and that gives the flush fitting flange around the block, so the whole thing fits in quite nicely like that. Ready for routing, you must always clamp the workpiece to a bench. Even for the shortest piece of work, don't risk not putting a clamp on. There we have one neatly routed out control cavity. So the control cavity is all routed out now. That will sit something like that, but it will be a modified plate different to that one. It's a good time now to check the alignment. I never rely 100% on the centre lines that are marked. Things can wander. Templates are not always perfectly flat, things are not always perfectly square, router cutters may not run perfectly true, and you've got very little leeway if things are out of line. And you've also got to remember that it must look correct visually, and you can get away with various discrepancies as long as it looks visually correct. So this is working out fine, just drop those on. But the most important thing is to check your string clearance on the edge of the fingerboard, so that you can't see the nut on this video, but that's off the nut and that's fine. So I'm happy with the positions of everything on there, including the centre line that's drawn on. So I'll use that now for routing out the pickups. We're having a set of Sunbear pickups on this guitar, as the same as the prototype. We've got a Sunbird in the bridge and a P90 in the neck. These are a couple of rings, that's cast aluminium and that's cast in resin. Perhaps not my colour, but it's worth considering. So same process, I shall drill those out and then route to the template. So there we have it, pickups neatly routed out. Something along those lines. Be good to get this one finished. Simnet guitars are a great place to get your templates. I'll put a link to Simnet in the description on this video. Just a small amount of glue, not gallons, keeping it the right way around. Don't do this at home. If you use too much glue, the cleanup could be very messy. This is quite handy because it has a channel routed in the back from the old flooring, which can take a lot of the glue squeeze out if you happen to put a little bit too much on. This piece, number 9, is running out slightly. So I'm squaring it to the top edge because this gap will be filled with a maple strip. taped up so your clamping coils don't stick to your work. Bit of light pressure. Check the straight edge. Tighten up. Clean off the top edge because that's where we need to add extra material later on when this is all set, gone off. There we are, on to the next one. So back on the Rock City flooring. It's progressed a bit, as you can see. That's the backing sheet. This is the first mule body that's nearly ready to go. So that will fit on top like that and be trimmed. So above the binding line, that line will be bound. We'll have the maple flooring, and that's the control cavity area. Because this has got some decent strength when it's attached to the plywood, I may well chamber this guitar so it'll end up being slightly lighter. We've just got a couple of extra pieces to add in here, and then that will be put onto a backing sheet, probably a piece of 3/4 ply, and then run through the planing machine. You can't put something that thin, not very easily anyway, through the machine. The last few pieces. The joints between the pieces are not that critical because they will all be filled with either maple or binding or both, and it's actually easier if the joint is slightly slack because they need cutting out with a Dremel, and it's hard work with a small cutter like that, so a slight gap actually helps the passage of the tool. But what is important is that the lines are maintained and they're all parallel to this edge, which will be the straight edge. You've always got to have an eye for what the visual impact is on something. This will now be clamped. Always have your clamps and any clamping coils ready to hand, just like I haven't. And there we have it in the box, the offcuts of history. If you don't want to be permanently bonded, wear gloves. This stuff was apparently developed in the Vietnam War for field dressings. Probably can't see what I'm doing there, but never mind. Bit of accelerator. If you're using a lot of this stuff, it's a good idea to do it outside or wear a proper mask, not a dust mask. That will sit nicely in there. Thin super glue with a whip tip on the bottle. I mean, this is dead easy because it's just straight. He says, with it slipping all over. You can use binding cement and elastic bands, but it's a pain in the arse. So there we have it. This is standing about a millimetre higher than the guitar body. Trim the ends. I'll actually take those down with the drum sander. And if you can see that, it's nice and smooth now. You can scrape this down, plane it, cut it with a chisel. I do find it weirdly satisfying, but we'll not go into that. It's also useful to keep some of this swarf, because if you do need to do any filling or jointing, you can dissolve that in a tiny drop of acetone and use it like a paste. The plane will remove any slight excess of super glue or whatever adhesive you've used. And there you have it. Just a nice finishing detail, I think. So at some point down the line, it's going to look a little bit like that. Or like that, but a better fit. Bit of a body carve here. If you want to see how to do this properly, take a look at some of the Crimson Guitars videos with Ben. He'll also show you how to sharpen your chisels correctly. There's some great stuff on that website, on that YouTube site I should say, on that YouTube channel. It's a slow process, a lot of which is down to feeling when it's right. You might not be able to see it, but we're working to a line down there, like so. Chalk highlights the high spots. If you're carving something like a Les Paul, this will take ages, but then again, why would you? You might as well just buy one off Gibson. This Obesh has quite pronounced grain, and you tend to find you can feel ridges running in line with the heavier grain lines. A lot of this will sand out. A reference line back. That line's now pretty good, as is that one. People sometimes use angle grinders or very heavy duty belt sanders. There's no right or wrong to it really. I just think there's something nice about slowly chiselling away. Very useful bit of kit. A Makita orbital sander. Battery powered. That's a 120 grit. I'd rather use something a bit coarser, but I haven't got anything in at the moment. You need to be careful on the arises with any form of power sanding, because you can just take off too much. I much prefer to do these by hand, so it's just not a sharp edge. I think it's probably all going to look pretty good. And of course, when you're sanding, always wear your dust mask. Grain filling, I hate this. This one is a solvent-based Dartfords from Rothco and Frost. You need to rub it in across the grain and then rub off as much as you can. Because if you don't, you've got to sand it all off afterwards and it takes forever. So only apply it in small amounts before it actually goes hard. And we do this so that the pores in between, or within the grain, can be brought flat with the surface of the guitar, so that when you lacquer it, the grain is filled and you don't see the lacquer sitting in the grain. Although that can actually look quite effective sometimes. You just need to decide what approach you're going to take. It will need to be left for 24 hours before it's sanded. So there we have the top filled, which will need to cure and then be sanded off tomorrow. The grain filler is too fine to be used to fill out general dents and knocks and chips. You need to use something like that, a Brummer wood stopping. It'll just, the grain filler is just not coarse enough to do that. The grain filler will highlight where you've got any scratches or dents you might not have been aware of. It happens all the time, so it's always best to have something like a piece of fresh cardboard on your workbench to try and eliminate as much as possible. Depends how hard the wood is. This is reasonably hard, but when you're using poplar it marks very easily. Back on the Rock City maple flooring top. Next stage is to route out the joints between the strips and fill them with maple using a Dremel. Don't like these much, but it's perfect for this sort of a job. Wear your safety glasses. So we set up a straight edge, clamping the work down and serving as a guide to the tool. It's the maple strip which I've planed down a little bit so it fits nicely into the slot. And you might have guessed it was a bit of a Blue Peter moment because I'd already routed that out. It doesn't actually cut that easily. So that will be glued in now and then planed down. This is just one of those pain jobs where the maple strips have got to be planed a little bit to fit. It's also a good idea to put a bit of a taper on them. Here we've got the top routed out and planed up, stuck to an MDF backing board. Now fitting the strips is just a pain. They've all got to be planed to fit. This is one of the problems working with old materials. Nearly. That's good. I've just received these from Mark at the university. I'm very pleased with them. Aluminium control plate, polished edge, bead blasted in the middle. That fits in there. They've not been drilled because I've not decided on the configuration yet. But that one's also been slotted for a 3-position switch, sliding switch. And that's going to look great. This can all be cleaned up later. Just a little bit further that way. When these are all fitted, I'll clamp it and leave it overnight. Important to keep these slots, transverse slots, clean. So that can be clamped now and left overnight. It doesn't actually take that long, it's just a laborious process in as much as you can't get on and do it all in one hit. And I've decided not to use I was going to use the binding to fill these gaps, but I decided it would emphasise the checkerboard look too much, and I want it to stay sort of unobtrusive. But the existing nail holes and things and a lot of the wear are still evident, which is great because that's what we want. And finally here we have it all clamped up. So here we've got the body all clamped up. Body's been cut out of mahogany, and we've got the maple flooring clamped to the top. That was glued up last week. We'll strip the clamps, see what it looks like. Using plenty of scrap clamping cawls so it doesn't damage the top. If there's any chance of adhesive squeezing out, always make sure you tape up the cauls so they don't stick to your work. When you're gluing two pieces together, there's a tendency for them to slide once you put any clamping pressure on. So this has got two pins, which are actually drill bits, that I've drilled in before applying any glue. That locates things precisely so that two surfaces can't slip about. They can be taken out now, and obviously they're drilled in a place where I know that's underneath the bridge plate and that'll be in the neck pickup, so it's not going to be seen. So there's the body, the back of the body, mahogany, routed out the control cavity, and that's the maple top, which now needs trimming to shape on the bandsaw and then finishing off with the router. So there it is, roughly cut to shape. That'll now be cleaned up with the trimmer, with the router, and then to match the mahogany profile, the profile of the back, and then the maple will be routed again to provide the rebate to sit the binding in, because it'll be bound all around its perimeter. This will be trimmed using a bottom bearing router, so that the bearing at the bottom of the cutter follows the body, which is already cut to the correct shape, and will trim the maple back to the same profile as the body. All set up to route. Body firmly clamped to the bench, dust extraction. Don't know how well this is going to come out. So there we have it, trimmed flush with the body. I'm not concerned with this area here because that will be in the neck pocket, and I think on this particular guitar I'm going to bind the whole top and then cut the neck pocket out afterwards through the binding.